Hey Mustangs, tonight we're going over the notes for finite differences. If you look in your iPod, you should already have glued in the finite differences instructions. These instructions are the steps that we're going to be going through when we fill in our finite differences table. However, I'm not going to be able to have the instructions up on the screen at the same time as we're going through our finite difference A, so if you could just reference those as we're going along. Okay, we're going to be doing finite difference A first. Look at the patterns 5, 8, 11, 14, and 17. Find the value of the 54th term. We're going to underline that. That's the first thing we need to find. And then we're also going to find the rule. Now, since this is our first one that we're doing, I'm going to explain a few things that are along the top of our table. Delta x is our change in our x value, which in our case is the next column, which is our term number. Our process column is going to be our combination of mx plus b. It will be how we get from this column to this column. Our next column is the value of the term, which is our y value, or our output. Here we have our delta y, or our change in y. In this column, we have our delta y over delta x, or our change in y over change in x. This is actually going to end up being what we call our slope. And we're going to reduce and simplify our delta y over delta x column in this column. This is going to end up being our m in our process column. Now let's go through the steps of filling out our table. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our delta x. We do so by finding how we get from one of our terms to the next. So let's see. How did we get from 1 to 2? Well, we added 1. How did we get from 2 to 3? We added 1. How did we get from 3 to 4? We added 1. And how did we get from 4 to 5? We added 1. I'm not going to do this one at this moment because, as you can see, we don't have a corresponding y value. We're going to look at 54 and x in just one moment. Now we're going to look at our delta y column, and we're going to find the difference in our y values. So from 5 to 8, 8 to 11, 11 to 14, and 14 to 17. So how did we get from 5 to 8? Well, we added 3. How did we get from 8 to 11? We added 3. 11 to 14, we added 3. And 14 to 17, we added 3. Next, we do our delta y over delta x column. In this column, we're going to take our two values that we have for each pairing, and we're going to put it in a fraction form. So I'm going to put the delta y, which is 3, over our delta x, which is 1. Then I look at my next one. Again, 3 over 1. Next one, again, 3 over 1. And last, again, 3 over 1. Now, in our next column, we're going to reduce, and we reduce or simplify our fractions by actually reducing them. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. 3 divided by 1, 3. 3 divided by 1, 3. And 3 divided by 1, 3. This gives us our m value. We're going to put this value now that we got for our reduced and simplified delta y over delta x as the first thing down our process column. So in all of our boxes, we're going to put a 3. And I'm even going to do it for the 54 and for the x. Next in our process column goes our x value. Well, remember our x value is our term numbers here. So we're going to put those in parentheses. So I'm going to say parentheses 1, and then the next one a 2, the next one a 3, the next one a 4, and the next one a 5. I'm now going to go ahead and do my 54. And then I'm going to put my x. Now, you can put your x in parentheses, but you do not have to. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it in parentheses. Next, we have to look and multiply these two numbers together and find out what do I need to add or subtract here for our b value in order to get to our y. If we take our calculator and we say 3 times 1, that gives us 3, and we need to get to a value of 5. So now I can take 5 and subtract 3, and I get a value of 2. So I would need to add 2. You can also look at it this way. 3 times 2 is 6. What number do I need to add or subtract to 6 in order to get 8? And that number is 2. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing all the way down our column. So 3 times 3 is 9. How would I get 11? I would add 2. 3 times 4 is 12. How would I get 14? Add 2. 3 times 5 is 15. How would I get to 17? I would add 2. Let's go ahead and look. All of these are adding 2. So let's make a guess that we would add 2 there. Let's take our calculator and find out what that value would be. So 3 times 54 plus 2 gives us 164. We're going to put that in our Y column, and then we're going to move on and add our plus 2 to our X. Now that I have this value, I want to go ahead and double check my ratio to make sure that they're all the same. So I'm going to find the difference between 54 and 5, and that's going to give me my change in X there. So let's go ahead and get our calculator back out. 54 minus 5 gives me a change of 49. So I added 49 here to get from 5 to 54. We need to do the same thing for delta Y. So we're going to say 164 minus 17. That gives us a value of 147. Now we're going to fill in our column here. We're going to say our change in Y, 147, divided by our change in X, which again was 49. And then let's get our calculator back out. Remember, our calculator is our friend. 147 divided by 49, and we get 3. Hooray, we did it right. All of our values are the same. We're not going to have anything in these two boxes or in this box here. Now that we filled in our finite difference table, we can answer the questions at the bottom of this sheet. Now that we can see our table in the bottom of the sheet, we're going to go ahead and fill in our tables. Our tables here are simply tables of X and Y values. This one here is horizontal, this one here is vertical. You may see it both ways, so we're going to go ahead and fill it out both ways. All across the top, we're going to put our X values, which we get from this column in our finite difference. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 54. And then we're going to fill in the same numbers down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 54. Now we're going to fill in our Y values. Our Y values are from our second column over here. So we're going to fill in 5, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 164. And again, 5, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 164. Now we're going to fill in our rule. Remember, we were to find the 54th term, which we did, and the rule. Well, this last box in our finite difference table gives us the rule. The rule is the one with the X actually in the process column. So our rule in this scenario is 3x plus 2. The next question asks us for the equation. Well, finite differences is kind of the preview to our next unit on linear equations. But what we do know is that an equation has to have an equal sign in it. So anytime we have the equation there, we're simply going to add y equals to our rule, and we now have an equation. You'll be seeing lots of these in the near future. The constant is the number that is added or subtracted in our process column. So in our case, our constant is 2. The coefficient is the number we get from the reduce and simplify column. It's our m, and it's also the number in front of the x. So the coefficient in our scenario is 3. Now we're going to write out a sentence. The ordinate also stands for the letter y. So we're going to say the ordinate is, and now we need to write this rule out in words. We're going to use the words 2 more than 3 times the abscissa. The abscissa is the word that stands for x. And last but not least, we're going to graph our ordered pairs. This tells us to graph the first 4, so we're going to graph 1 through 4 out of our table. To do that, we need to label our axes on our graph, and we need to do our scale. I'm going to go by ones here. And then on my y's, my values go up kind of fast, so in order for it to get 14 on my graph, I'm going to change that scale to be by 2's. And so I'm going to graph my ordered pairs now. Remember, we're going to graph our x and then our y. So it's 1, 5, so I go to 1 on my x and I go up to 5, then 2 and up to 8, 3 up to 11, and 4 to 14. Now we've graphed our first 4 ordered pairs. And look at those dots. Doesn't it look like if I were to connect them, they might form a line? Again, another preview to our next unit. That concludes the notes for tonight. Go ahead and put any questions you have in the summary below. And y'all have a great night, Mustangs.